Welcome to the Not Old Better Show, the show for all of us who aren't old, we're better. Each week, we'll interview superstars, experts, and ordinary people doing extraordinary things, all related to this wonderful experience of getting better, not just older. Now, here's your host, the award-winning Paul Vogelzang.
Thank you and welcome to the Not Old Better Show Art of Living series. Today's show is brought to you by Aura Frames. Aura Frames, the gift that brings your favorite holiday traditions and memories to life every day. This is our annual charitable giving show, and we're proud to announce that our 2025 giving selection is the life-changing vision restoration campaign from the Fred Hollows Foundation, supported by Causeway's $10 million matching challenge. Today, we're talking about something that affects millions and could very well affect someone you know and love, because around the world, more than 43 million people are blind. And the shocking truth is, 9 out of 10 of those cases are entirely preventable. Imagine being unable to see your grandchildren's faces. That would just be impossible for me. Or having to stop working or reading simply because your sight failed and no one was there to help. That's the reality in places like Ethiopia and Cambodia, where basic eye care is often out of reach. But it doesn't have to stay that way. Joining us today are two remarkable people, Andrea Senaverino-Gallen and Doug Heskey. Andrea Gallen is the executive director of the Fred Hollows Foundation in the United States, one of the world's most trusted vision restoration organizations, and Doug Heskey is CEO of Causeway, whose platform is helping fuel a $10 million matching campaign to restore sight to tens of thousands of people. We'll hear how cataract surgeries costing less than $25 are getting people back to work, how a simple pair of eyeglasses can keep a child in school, and how every dollar you give right now can go twice as far thanks to this match. And we'll ask something simple. How can we help? This is about dignity, legacy, and action. It's about doing something measurable and meaningful, especially at the end of the year when so many of us are thinking about how to give back. So stay tuned. This one's personal, powerful, and filled with hope. Here now is our conversation with Andrea Gallen and Doug Heskey. Doug Heskey, Andrea Senaverino-Gallen, welcome to the program.
Paul, thank you. Wonderful to be here.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Paul. Really delighted to have the opportunity to speak with you today and your audience.
Well, thank you. That's kind of you to say right out of the gate, Andrea. I appreciate it. I know my audience is going to be interested in hearing more of what you have to say. And let's start with you. I'd like to put a little context around this subject. We're talking about vision restoration. We're going to be talking about blindness. We're going to be talking about overseas, blindness surgeries and work to restore vision. And so I wonder, Andrea, if you could just give us a little bit of an idea of the background of this campaign, because we're going to be referencing that throughout the episode. And maybe my audience loves stories. I love story too. Maybe if you have a story of transformation you can share with us, someone whose sight was restored, that would be great to hear too.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'd be delighted to do that. Why don't I give a little bit of background very briefly on the Fred Hollows Foundation, which might be helpful. We're a global nonprofit. We're in our 32nd year now. We're a global organization on a mission to eliminate avoidable blindness. And it's a staggering statistic where 9 out of 10 people who are blind do not need to be. And so our work is dedicated to ensuring that we can restore sight to everyone who needs it. And with that, we work across 25 countries and making sure that no one who needs eye health is deprived of that and can receive high quality health care. With that, across those 25 countries, I'd like to share a story about our work in Ethiopia, Ethiopia has one of the highest burdens of avoidable blindness in the world. And an example of avoidable blindness is cataract surgeries, which I think many in your audience will be quite familiar with and will understand the extraordinary impact that restoring your sight through cataract surgery can have. I'm going to share a little quick story on Bashadu, who is a woman in her 60s who lives in a bustling township in Ethiopia's Oromia region. She would earn a living collecting wood from the forest. She would carry that for about 5 to 6 miles through rough terrain every day. She contracted malaria, and while she was recovering from that, she noticed that her vision was deteriorating. And after a hospital visit on a follow-up around malaria, she was diagnosed with cataracts. But despite that diagnosis, she wasn't able to afford the treatment or the transportation costs to access the help that she needed. And because of that, she spent most of the time in her home. And she relied on visits from her daughter and the generosity of local people who could assist her to navigate sometimes very uneven and muddy walking paths. She was really, she became completely dependent on others around her. And this is a woman who was very independent. And this is an example of older people like Bashadu who face real barriers in accessing eye care. There are over 700,000 people in Ethiopia who are waiting for cataract surgery. So thankfully, through a program that we have in the Oromia region, which we started a couple of years ago, we're working to strengthen the eye health system. We train eye surgeons and workers and ensure that people like Bashadu have access to cataract surgery at no cost to them. So we were able to reach her, perform that cataract surgery, and now she is independent again. She can work. She can walk to church, which is very important to her. Her daughter is able to return to her own independent life. She can work outside of the home. She can continue her studies. And Bashadu has regained her independence. And as she said, there is nothing better in this world for me than having my sight back. So that's a small example, I think, of the kind of transformational work that restoring sight can do and can have on a person's life, not only for that individual, but for their family. And that extends to the community as well.
Thank you, Andrea. I love that story about Bashadu. I know there's just so much independence and so much empowerment that can come from feeling that sense of kind of completeness, physical completeness, that you just can go about your daily life. So, Doug Heskey, I want to turn to you and talk about kind of the money part of it now too, because there are certainly some interesting questions that come as a result of understanding how this matching program works. Maybe you could start by describing that, especially for our listeners who really do tend to think of a year-end time as a period for them to make contributions. So if someone in our audience is going to make a $500 or $50 campaign contribution, how does that get leveraged into greater resources for the organization?
Great. Thanks, Paul. And I guess first and foremost, Bashadu's plight should not in any way be diminished. These are real-world problems that we as an organization, and certainly in association with our partnership with the Fred Hollows Foundation, are trying to solve. People spending hours a day walking for firewood or water. I have several children at home, and they, like when I was growing up, oftentimes got lectured around this idea that they were taking too long of a shower. Those aren't the water problems that so many in the world are suffering from today. So we as an organization at Causeway Impact are really bringing about opportunities for individuals and institutions to get informed, the education and learning piece of the work that we do, get engaged. How do we as citizenry actually get out there and participate in stronger fashion to address these real world problems? And then lastly, how do we deploy capital? Deploy capital in an effective way that has the most meaning, the most impact. And as an organization, we define what those dollar pathways are to impact as well. The work of the Fred Hollows Foundation is truly extraordinary. And we had this unique opportunity to do work with them that was introduced to us through a common friend. And after first sitting down with Andrea and learning more about the organization, we knew that it would be a perfect fit for us. What's so extraordinary about what we're doing right now in this season of giving through Giving Tuesday is that we do have this anonymous donor on the West Coast that has agreed to match dollars that are coming into the Fred Hollows Foundation all the way up to $10 million.
Wow.
That is so incredibly powerful.
Wow.
So for somebody that comes into the Causeway Impact platform and makes a decision to contribute even just $5 or $5,000 to the organization, every one of those dollars will be matched between now and year end. So we're essentially doubling the impact here.
That's powerful. That is really an amazing contribution matching campaign. So we'll put links so that our audience can find Causeway, find out more information about Doug and Andrea and all of the programs that we're going to be talking about today. But Andrea, I want to flip this and ask you a question, because so many in our audience are grandparents, perhaps their family members. Bashadu's story is so wonderful, and I wonder how her own family reacted to her restoration of sight, because often that's an issue for us. We take care of each other. It takes a village, as they say. And so I do think that it's important to think about how the external and extended family fits into all of this, because there's a real connection there.
Absolutely. And as Bashadu's story illustrated I think so well, oftentimes when that older person is unable to care for themselves, they are then in a position where they're dependent on their children, on their grandchildren for support. And oftentimes it is the daughter and the granddaughter who become those caregivers. So a daughter, for example, may no longer be able to work outside the home to help support her own family. A granddaughter may be asked to stay behind to care for an older grandparent, and therefore is missing out on school. And so there's a huge impact there, multi-generational impact when someone is blind, but in a way that is preventable or reversible. And so we know that that by restoring someone's sight, we are allowing that person to regain their independence. We're allowing that entire family to regain time, to regain income, to regain education, career development opportunities, and it becomes an economic development opportunity as well for the community. Right, that person is no longer dependent on those around them and is able to contribute to that community in ways that then are elevated all the way up to a country's GDP. When you have millions and millions of people in a country who are suffering from avoidable blindness, when their sight is restored, that's a huge boost economically to a country. And we know that the intervention through eye health is one of the, if not the greatest returns on investment. For every $1 invested, there's a $28 return. So it's quite extraordinary. There's really nothing else like that has such a human impact, such a family and community impact, as well as an economic impact.
I think we're all drawn to specific causes for specific reasons. And I wonder, because that's an amazing ratio, Andrea. Thank you for sharing that. Doug, what drew you and Causeway to this effort? Because the outcomes seem to be very impressive, but there perhaps maybe was a personal side to this too, or was there perhaps something that really drew you guys to the Fred Hollows Foundation in particular about this subject?
Yeah, I would share with you that it's always personal. It is for me, every one of our team members. And one of the things that I think we've been effectively able to do as an organization is to build what is an iconic and emotional connection to the underlying cause. around blindness, around human equity. And when investors and philanthropists have an opportunity to make that connection, they make a different decision in terms of how they're allocating their capital. We as an organization create what are blended finance solutions. So we are creating portfolios that are tied to what are 6 areas of impact: climate action, air quality, water quality, including ocean health, regeneration and healthy soils, biodiversity and conservation, and then lastly, human equity. And of course, all of those issues are intersectional. You can't speak about one without having an impact on another. The way that Andrea and I met was very, very fortuitous. So one of the board members of the Fred Hollows Foundation and I were in conversation with a woman that leads another organization that is a partner of New Day, where I also chair their board. And we were having this conversation about clean water and sanitation. And both of us looked at one another, because I knew she was on the board of the Fred Hollows Foundation, and made this connection that the Fred Hollows Foundation is literally sitting downstream from the work of this other water organization. And one is so foundational. Let's make sure that we're delivering clean water to people, particularly in West Africa, that need it. And then for those individuals that are afflicted with a bacteria in the eye called trachoma, which is a leading cause of blindness around the world, particularly in developing countries, the Fred Hollows is the local solution that helps support that. And doing it, solving what is this really important global issue on a hyper-localized level as well. So coming back to the blended finance piece of this, addressing public market behavior is really, really important. So there are thousands of public organizations that are exemplary stewards of environmental efforts and social efforts. Private markets are also really, really important. It's where a lot of the innovation occurs in private companies and a lot of the deep impact. There are 2 other pieces that oftentimes get missed, which is where we're trying to create alignment. One is in philanthropy. So let's make sure that if people are making philanthropic contributions, they are aligned with their investment behavior as well, and not in conflict with one another. The last piece of it is perhaps one of the most important, that sits outside of the capital equation, and that is consumer behavior. How do we get individuals making different decisions in their life to live more responsibly, to think about the decisions that they're making that have a monumental impact in a collective way on the planet that we're trying to save right now?
Before we continue, I want to pause for just a moment. You've been hearing about the incredible work the Fred Hollows Foundation is doing. Real people, real results, and sight being restored where it was once thought lost. And thanks to the matching campaign through Causeway, every dollar you give today will have twice the impact. For many of us in this audience, we understand what it means to lose a little clarity in our vision. Now imagine never being able to get it back, not because the solution didn't exist, but because it simply wasn't available. This campaign is about changing that. It's about giving someone their life back. We'll get back to our conversation in just a moment, but I encourage you, if this speaks to you, visit the Fred Hollows Foundation, the Causeway site, download the app. A gift of $25, $50, or whatever feels right can be the difference between darkness and light for someone who's been waiting years to see again. We'll be right back with more from Doug Heskey and Andrea Galan. I mentioned our sponsor today, Aura Frames, and if you're a last-minute shopper like me, you know the feeling. The shelves are bare, your ideas are running on empty, and you start seriously considering a scented candle or a gift card again. Aura is the answer to your holiday gifting stress. Find something thoughtful, especially for those closest to us. All of this can be a challenge. We don't want to default to something generic. We want a gift that actually means something. Aura Frames turns your favorite memories into a personal, meaningful gift that's been named #1 by Wirecutter and even made Oprah's favorite things list. So yes, it's officially approved by both tech reviewers and the queen of gifting herself. Just download the Aura app, connect to Wi-Fi, and start uploading unlimited photos and videos from your phone. You can preload it before it ships and add a personal message so it arrives ready to make someone smile right out of the box. This is an amazing feature. And yes, the box is gift ready. No price tag, no stress. You can't wrap togetherness, but you can frame it. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames named #1 by Wirecutter by using the promo code NOB. You all know the promo code NOB. That's Aura, AURA frames.com, promo code NOB. This deal is exclusive to listeners and frames sell out fast. So order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. All of this will be in our show notes today, but support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Doug Heskey, Andrea Sanmarino Galan, guests today on the program. We are talking about a vision restoration program. The program is in Ethiopia and Cambodia presently. I'm sure you want to expand that, and I know, Andrea, you've been working within Ethiopia and Cambodia over a decade, and I wonder if you'll just share with us briefly what you and your teams have really learned that's changed how we think about delivering basic eye care, because every country, every local district has its own kind of specifics and needs for attention around some of those individual requirements. What have you learned?
Absolutely. It is very context specific in that way. One of the most important lessons we've learned is that you cannot solve avoidable blindness with a short-term investment or one-off surgeries. As transformational as those one-off surgeries are, this is about creating sustainable eye health systems to care for specific populations that are in need. So across those 25 countries, all of our teams are local, and we work in partnership with governments, with ministries of health, as well as local NGOs to deliver those services. So for us, that means we're training local doctors and nurses. We're making sure that eye health exams are part of well-being visits. So really integrating that into primary care, doing those checks early and often, and also sharing our knowledge and expertise with governments as we together work hand in hand, and they build their own capacity to restore sight, which is also restoring hope and dignity to their populations. So, for example, in Ethiopia, as we spoke about earlier, there's now basic eye care built into rural health clinics. So people no longer need to take off of work and lose income because they have to travel for more than a day, usually by foot, just to be seen. So more people are being evaluated and treated earlier and often.
For both of you, then, let's talk a little bit about some of the risks that occur if we don't take action. What happens? What happens in these communities? What happens globally? You've touched on some of this, but I'd like to dive deeper into some of the risks that can really result, especially in older populations. I think our audience is going to really relate to that.
Well, populations are aging. So right now we know that more than 1 billion people globally still don't receive the eye care that they need. And as those populations continue to age, that number will only grow. So if we don't scale now, and we have reached over 90 million people with our services. However, we'll see more older people becoming blind unnecessarily. More families will lose independence, they'll lose income, there'll be more pressure on already stretched health systems. And for children won't be able to experience that magic of childhood. Grandparents won't be able to see their families. They won't see the faces of their children or their grandchildren. So there's a massive human element to this, as well as a much larger component both on the healthcare systems as well as financially. We know that economically, current productivity losses annually through vision loss costs over $400 billion. And in some countries where we've made a really strong progress, there's a risk of slipping backwards if we don't sustain that level of investment. We know that eye health, of course, relies on trained staff. You need ophthalmologists, optometrists, ophthalmic nurses, other practitioners. You need functioning equipment, and then ongoing outreach to reach those who are the hardest to reach, who are not in those urban areas where you would more typically find access. So we also very much prioritize reaching those in rural areas, what we call the hardest to reach. So if we don't prioritize that, the waiting list will only continue to grow. There'll be more backlogs in cataract surgery, for example, more people who will be suffering from blinding trachoma. And we can see how quickly gains can be jeopardized when programs lose funding or when trained doctors and nurses can't be hired to build these systems.
Doug?
Yeah, Paul. Yeah,
please.
So Andrea described so well the potential consequences of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And one of our core missions as an organization and through this partnership is really about bridging the chasm between awareness and action. And the paradox today is that individuals who are oftentimes on the front line of solving all of these issues don't necessarily think about the massive impact that they can have in a collective way by banding together. So it's not enough anymore to make a social media post to express your outrage over some of the things that are going on in the world, but we have to activate. We have to give people a mechanism whereby, in a frictionless way, they can direct capital, philanthropic capital, to the organizations that are in most need of it, particularly this year, given the cutbacks with the elimination of USAID and federal cutbacks here in the United States and globally as well. And so this becomes critically important because today, given all the issues that we're suffering from now, it is the responsibility of all of us as citizenry to step up and fill that gap. And the challenge is that we've got this growing wealth disparity all over the world. It's not just here in the United States, with a heavy concentration of capital that resides with individuals and big families and all that aren't necessarily doing as much as we would hope that they would do in supporting these efforts. So we need to motivate people here. We need to be building movements that demonstrate that we are a community of people that care about those that are less fortunate.
And for a smallish we've been talking about some big numbers, but really I think $50 goes a long way. What would you say to our audience that feels like, well, maybe it's not enough to make, maybe I need to make a larger contribution?
Yeah, so you're singing our song, and this is what we're doing as an organization. And we have for the last 10 years as an organization worked with a number of major families and foundations in supporting these efforts. And we had what was this awakening a year ago, and said we're just not driving the change that we want to see fast enough, and we have to find a way to democratize this effort. Democratize philanthropy, democratize investing, and create this whole new set of donors that at the end of the year can take a percentage of their earnings and contribute those earnings back to these incredible organizations that are doing the world's work right now. And so there is no number that is too small. And when we set up the platform that we launched during Climate Week in New York City during the UN General Assembly, we wanted to deliver a number or an opportunity that people could participate almost at any level. So for a minimum of $5, somebody can make a decision and contribute to an organization that in aggregate with 1 million other donors, that ends up being an extraordinary number supporting what is this incredible cause. And the Fred Hollows Foundation is one of 55 other organizations that we support on the Causeway platform. And one of the other things that we're trying to do is to get these nonprofit organizations working with one another in an environment where resources are incredibly constrained right now. We can help one another.
Doug Heskey, Andrea Santamarino-Galan, thank you so much for your time. We, of course, will have links to the app, to various websites where our audience can find out more information about giving and doing so generously. Certainly, we all want to make a difference, and we appreciate your time. This is our annual Giving Back episode. I've been, just so impressed with all of your work. And I really want to implore our audience to take part in this, to give some expansion and access to site, because it just is so critical, just as you've both said. Thank you for your time. I guess selfishly, I would just love to have you back. Come back sometime next year. Update us a little bit, please. And as things change in your world, please consider updating us, because we would love it.
Well, we'd love to do that, and happy holidays to you and to your audience.
Thank you so very much for this extraordinary opportunity to speak with you and your community. We'd love to come back and update you on the incredible impact that your audience is having on our work.
That's our show today, and I hope you found it as inspiring and meaningful as I did. We're grateful for Aura Frames to sponsor and be part of our programming on an ongoing basis. Remember, Aura Frames is the gift that brings your favorite holiday traditions and memories to life every day. A heartfelt thank you to Andrea Galan of the Fred Hollows Foundation and Doug Heskey, CEO of Causeway, for sharing their insight, passion, and commitment to restoring sight to people who need it most. You heard the numbers. Millions of people living with preventable blindness, and a solution that costs less than a dinner out. This isn't just a campaign, it's a chance to change lives twice over, thanks to the generous $10 million matching challenge. So, if you're thinking about a year-end gift, this is a cause that brings health, dignity, and hope to families around the world. Visit the Fred Hollows site, download the Causeway app to learn more and make your gift count. And of course, you can catch today's conversation and all our previous episodes at notold-better.com. We're also on social media. Follow us on Twitter at notoldbetter and on Instagram at notoldbetter for more stories, updates, and ways to stay involved. This has been a production of NOBS Studios. I'm Paul Vogel saying, be well, be safe. Let's talk about better. The Not Old Better Show on radio and podcast. Thanks, everybody. Happy holidays. Pleased to be spending time with you. Hope you'll join me again next time.